Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and today I'm talking about Skillhouse, the new indie horror movie written and directed by Josh Stolberg of Jigsaw and Saw X fame, which kind of feels like Saw, but with it's like TikTok meets Saw or Saw on TikTok. We have 10 different social media influencers in this house that is apparently a famous house called the Sway House. I'm not Gen Z, I don't know any of this stuff, and they're dying off one by one. This is a movie that it's in limited release. I know it came out through Fathom Events. I had to drive a bit to be able to find a theater that was playing it, and I have thoughts. I didn't right off the bat. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It does some things well, some things. Let's get into Skill House.
God, you're sad.
I hope you die next.
As I said, I am what you would call a millennial. That's right, I'm one of those. So this whole like TikTok influencer, whatever, I am not the target demographic for it. I am not in any way, shape, or form. I have all these social media platforms to put out like fun horror stuff, but I don't really consume it. I put it out so you guys can waste all your time consuming it. But I was intrigued by the idea because I think that and Josh Stolberg, who I'm a huge fan of his podcast that he and Darren Balsamo are doing right now. Darren and Josh Make a Movie. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do so. I really like the concept of sort of like a horror satire taking, because let's be honest, influencers, which is a word I absolutely despise, and I hate them even saying it here. In my day, influencers were just cult leaders. And well, you saw how that went. But I love the concept of like let's take them and kind of poke fun at them and kind of do it as a Saw movie. And at times, Skillhouse definitely feels like it's borrowing very very heavily from Saw, to the point that if it wasn't written and directed by someone who was involved with the Saw movies, I would call it a Saw ripoff. I feel like I can't really say that because you can't rip off something that you are part of. So this is more like he wanted to make his own Saw movie, just kind of on his own, separate from, the continuity, which that's fine. And when the movie is being a genuine satire, I think it works brilliantly. It's funny. All the characters are insufferable. Well, almost all of them, which I know is a huge criticism that people have of horror movies. They say, "Oh, none of the characters are likable," but they're gonna die. So I feel like in a situation like this, if they're insufferable, you're kind of rooting for them to die. And then when they do die in some genuinely gruesome manners, and that's the other thing about this movie, the kills are insane. And I think if it weren't for the kills, it would it has issues with some of the dialogue, some of the acting. It feels very indie, and I don't necessarily mean that as an insult. I just mean that I can sense that there were practical limitations the production had, maybe due to budget. Maybe they didn't have time to do, as many takes. Maybe they only had certain actors for, certain number of days, like 50 Cent. And the limitations are just there. But I don't want to necessarily hold that against the movie for having those very practical limitations. I know what it's like to make an independent film. I know that every single, independent filmmaker looks at their movie and they're more critical than the harshest of critics, saying, "Oh, I wish we had done this better. Oh, I wish, we were supposed to have this for this scene, but on the day of shooting, it didn't work out." So I don't want to necessarily dwell on that. It's not, it's not Sinners. It's not Nosferatu. It's not anything, it is what it is. And I think if you're going into a horror satire comedy parody that's about social media influencers being killed off one by one, you kind of know what you're getting. And I like that the movie is kind of in on the joke, and that it ramps up the kills to 11 and the gore to, like, one scene in particular is genuinely grotesque. And my one friend who I saw it with was horrified the entire time, and I thought I was laughing at him. And then, you've seen him on the channel before. I've done videos with him. And I always say to him, like, no, I laugh at you because you're reacting like a normal human is supposed to react. I'm the sick, twisted, maniac that laughs and smiles during these. You are normal. You are human. I'm the one with the problem. But I really like that it did deliver on, and that Josh Stolberg, he knows what horror fans want. I just think with this movie, part of it is kind of going for the horror fan, and part of it's going for that like Gen Z. And I'm not in that target demographic. I know that the star of the movie, Bryce Adam, is a legit influencer. I hate, you have no idea how much I hate saying that word. But everyone else is an actor, and I'm told that like they were kind of like parodying different types of people in that sphere. I'm not too familiar with Bryce Hall. I called him Adam earlier. It's Hall, Bryce Hall. My apologies. I looked him up. Some of the stuff I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna like this guy very much. But again, he's not really supposed to be likable, and it's fun to watch people get picked off one by one, even if it does feel like it's trying very hard to be Saw. But again, I can't really knock it for that, given that it is written and directed by someone who was involved with that, well, with that franchise. It also reminded me a bit of, I don't know if you guys have seen Stream. It came out last year. Kind of similar, where like it's this death game being streamed over the internet, which kind of like with this movie, one of the rules is you can't signal for help. You can't. And the whole time I'm like, if millions of people are watching this, how are like how are law enforcement around the world not watching this and trying to put a trace on it? Again, I understand that, once you go down that rabbit hole, it becomes a very different movie. I understand that this is not the kind of movie that had the budget probably for a massive SWAT team. Look back at Saw 2, where I think they only had like 5 or 6 actors like in the SWAT uniforms, and they literally ran back and forth in front of the camera to give the appearance that there were many more of them, running about. So I don't necessarily hold that against it. We do get a really fun, not quite a cameo, because he does kind of play. He is in it a bit once he shows up, but he shows up late. With Neil McDonough as the cop who shows up. I just really enjoy seeing him in things. Loved him in Minority Report. He's one of the Howling Commandos in Captain America: First Avenger. I know he was on. I think he was on the Peggy Carter show. I don't see too much of him anymore, and it was just cool to see him, in a role and kind of having fun with it. If you're going to Skillhouse looking for like the next greatest horror film, it's not going to be it. I love Josh Stolberg. Josh, if you're watching this, I love your work. Really looking forward to the movie that you and Darren are going to make. I'm following the podcast, week after week. But I enjoyed Skillhouse for what it is. It's not perfect, but I think it hits its point, especially, I don't want to spoil it, but especially there's one moment at the end that kind of gruesomely drives home the point. It's a satire, really kind of up until that part where it gets real, and I thought that was really really effective. That it shows that, in terms, again, no spoilers, but just the idea of, you know we're harming the audience by giving them an unrealistic portrayal of whatever, of life, of finances, of lifestyle. Hell, the house they're in is this giant mansion, which I'm told is called the Sway House, and it was some TikTok thing. I don't know. Look, if you're Gen Z and you're watching this, please explain to me what all of this is. I am I'm an expert in horror. I'm not an expert in social media influencers. So I would love to hear kind of what your guys' opinions of that are, and what this movie was like from that perspective. But anyways, at the end, I think it really drives home the point of the harm that's being done. I have 2 children myself. Now they are still they're both under 10, so they're not quite at the point yet that they don't have smartphones, and that's not something they're going to get for a while, if ever. And but they have gotten into like just watching, because we have like YouTube on the TV, and there's like random influencers that they somehow stumbled upon. And I'm like, I don't know that I want you watching this stuff. Not because it's, necessarily inappropriate, but just what is this filling your head with? And, is this rotting your brain? And I know that people said the same thing about, horror movies and Saturday morning cartoons. But even those, there was a greater theme to it. There was a greater, something. X-Men the animated series is so much deeper than a lot of parents in the 90s gave it credit for. And I think a lot of, adult fans today who grew up watching that show, like myself, kind of acknowledge it now, and we go back and revisit it now, like, oh wow, that was actually deep. This was an allegory for this, and this was meant to be a metaphor for this. I don't see that with the current, like, just content. And the movie, I think, on the one hand, it kind of endorses it, again, by having a influencer, hate that word, as the star of the movie, who he plays it well because he's basically just playing himself. And again, what little I dug into his channel and found that he did a video where he's like, I want to be Andrew Tate for a day. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna like anything about this guy. I'm not calling him out or anything, but just I think I'm not gonna consume anything he puts out. I'm it's not for me. I'm not interested. But it also kind of criticizes it, and I know that on the one hand it may feel like, oh, how can you criticize it if you're endorsing it, or how can you address it without having to endorse it? It's kind of a tricky, slippery slope, and maybe I'm giving it more credit than I should, but I'm just saying I enjoyed that part of it. Overall, it's a fun, gruesome, gory horror movie. If you love good kills, if you're just looking for a laid back good time, I think you'll enjoy it. I think Gen Z fans will probably like it more than millennials and, dare I say, boomers, only because I think that they'll be more just kind of fluent in that language, in that, not dialect, just in that world, in that subculture, than even I was. But I couldn't. The fact that it still needed some polishing around the edges, kind of, I would say it's okay. It was fine. It was fine. I'm glad I saw it. I had fun seeing it, but I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. But hey, these are just my thoughts. These are just my ramblings. This is just my review. If you want to do one, get your own channel. Let me know in the comments, what did you think of Skillhouse? Did you see it? If, like I said, if you are a Gen Z viewer, I would love to know what your opinion of it was, and kind of, did it accurately capture that? Are there things it was satirizing that completely went over my head as an aging millennial? Please let me know. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up trapped in a beautiful mansion, but being killed one by one, which, despite being watched by the entire world, people are unable to reach you and rescue you. And as always, every day is Halloween.